各位女士、各位先生、各位学生，大家好. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to begin by thanking the Epoch Foundation from the bottom of my heart for inviting me to be here today to join in this momentous occasion, especially Chairman Barry Lam, and also to wish Epoch a very happy birthday. So the title of my remarks today is Chinese Culture. It's not just for Chinese people anymore. Now, what do I mean by that? As any casual observer of American society today could tell you, China is hot. You look at any newspaper, any magazine, any travel brochure, and it's totally obvious. But in order to understand the larger significance of this, I think it's helpful to look through the lens of the past. In fact, this is actually not the first time in American history that China has been hot. Americans were very fascinated by Chinese culture and Chinese luxury goods at the time of George Washington, and in the 1930s, they were crazy about Shanghai. But I think that there is something different this time around, and that has to do with the relationship of Chinese culture to American culture. And so that's what I would like to unpack very briefly for you here today. Now, in the first half of the 20th century, many people, both in China and in America, thought there was some fundamental difference between Chinese culture and American culture, between Orient and Occident. So the dominant expectation during that time was if Chinese immigrants would come to the United States, they must fully integrate and assimilate into the American culture, to learn English and to forget their own language and their culture. Today, we find something very different. When Chinese immigrants come to the US, of course they learn English, but they are also viewed as bringing with them valuable linguistic and cultural skills that are highly marketable. And so any of our wonderful YEF interns and former interns would have excellent opportunities in America today. Many Americans also look to China as representing the future. In fact, I should say Greater China, of course. So there is no doubt that today we're in the midst of a China craze that is very different from anything in American history. And one measure of this new craze and fashion is the trend for studying the Chinese language and culture. So according to a study that was funded by the United States Department of Education, Mandarin Chinese is one of the fastest growing languages for study in American universities today. As you can see from their study, the enrollments at the college level have increased 51% between 2002 and 2006. And of course, we at MIT are very proud to be ahead of the curve. You can see our enrollments have increased a whopping 115% since 1998. And the really phenomenal number is if we look at the enormous change from 1960 to 2006. In 1960, only under 2,000 students were enrolled in Chinese language classes. Today, the number is over 51,000. Now, perhaps even more remarkable is the spread of Chinese language teaching to secondary and elementary schools. In the past, students who would like to learn Chinese before college were very much limited to the Chinese language schools that were within the immigrant communities. And now we have the Chinese Language Association for Secondary and Elementary Schools, CLASS, leading a charge in the US to make Chinese language education a part of the mainstream American educational system. And according to their survey, they have met with a great deal of success. Between 2003 and 2007, there was a 61% increase across America in students who are learning Chinese. Chinese immersion programs and charter schools have also popped up all across the country. And these new programs are completely different from the bilingual programs in the past, which were aimed to use a mother tongue education to try to integrate immigrants into the American society. Today is actually almost the reverse. Bilingual education for native English-speaking American students to teach them foreign languages like Chinese. So for American parents who really have this China fever, they could even begin letting their children learn the Chinese language before kindergarten by sending them to a bilingual preschool like Bilingual Buds. This fashion has even gotten to the extreme that a New York Times article in 2006 reported a new fashion across the country from elite families to try to hire Mandarin-speaking nannies for their babies so they could learn Chinese and get a head start. Now, clearly, as many newspapers have reported, Chinese is now the it language in America. So what's driving this new interest? I'm going to just briefly discuss three factors here today. Now, the obvious one that everybody would know is the opening of China since the economy, right, since the 1980s, and the perception of Greater China as a place of new opportunities. And so parents would very much like to give their children opportunities to advance their careers by hoping they could learn Chinese from a very young age. A second factor that might not be as well known here is the enormous growth of adoption from China in the United States since 1983. And China is in fact currently the leading nation in the United States for international adoptions. And many of the American parents who adopt children from China would really like them to connect with their heritage and so learn the Chinese language. And even the American families themselves are very involved in learning about Chinese culture and participating in cultural activities. And third factor is the real visibility of Chinese immigrants and Chinese Americans in the society today. Since 1965, the growth of Chinese immigration in America has been phenomenal. And you can just see from these numbers from the 1990 to 2000, a leap in Chinese Americans in the society. Chinese today is actually the third most widely spoken language in the US, only behind English and Spanish. Now, as the students of this new generation are learning the Chinese language, they very naturally become also interested in other aspects of Chinese culture. The food, the music, the art, the calligraphy, holidays, the Peking opera, and so forth. And so this is also, you can see, in a summer camp. You can send your children to Chinese culture or heritage summer camp in the summertime to learn all different aspects of Chinese culture. And so I want to say, if we look at these statistics from the class survey of high school enrollments in the United States of native and non-native students, and the blue bar is actually the non-Chinese heritage students, red bar is Chinese heritage students, it's very clear, Chinese culture is not just for Chinese people anymore.